The movie opens with a group of people falling from the sky, as if they've been thrown from a plane. The scene then shifts to 28 years earlier, introducing a man named Dan. He's dejected after Arthur rejects his job offer over the phone, and is watching a Brazil football match on TV with his daughter, Murray. Suddenly, a group of soldiers teleports into their living room. One of them, a female soldier, announces they are from the future. She explains that a war with alien creatures began 30 years ago, and within the next 12 months, humanity will be extinct. If humans help them with their mission, they might be able to defeat these aliens. She requests everyone to train with them to fight against the aliens. The scene changes again, showing Dan as a high school science teacher. He's teaching a class, but his mind isn't on the lesson. A boy named Martin keeps talking about fire, which makes everyone, including the teacher, sad. Martin's topic is a very old one. During class, Dan receives a call from a military base. He undergoes a test where a black badge is placed on his wrist. An officer tells him, "Dan, you have been selected for our work." Dan still doesn't know what he's been chosen for. The female officer then tells him, "You have only 7 years left to live." Hearing this, Dan asks how they know his death date. Nevertheless, they put the black badge on his hand. They warn Dan that if he quits the mission or tries to remove the badge, they will know, and a member of his family will have to join the war. In the next scene, Dan and his wife are shown. Dan's wife works in the war's consultancy department. Seeing the badge on Dan's hand, she advises him to go to his father to have it removed, as only his father can do it. However, Dan hasn't spoken to his father for a long time. His father left him years ago, leading to an argument between them. In anger, Dan leaves without removing the badge. He then tells his wife, "I have to go to this war, otherwise they will take another family member." Dan used to work in the military, so he has experience in this field. Dan says goodbye to his daughter and goes to the military camp. Many other people also arrive there. They undergo basic training and are divided into 2 separate forces, the D-Force and the R-Force. Dan meets Charlie, another R-Force member. Charlie points to a man in a pink shirt and tells Dan that this man, Dorian, has been to war 3 times before and returned alive each time. He has killed a white spike. The scene shifts to the R-Force members being given some special information. They learn that R-Force stands for Research Force. They will all go to the future to conduct various research and help others. The scene changes again, with Charlie and Dan talking about each other. Suddenly, a red light alarm goes off, and everyone gets their guns ready for battle. Someone starts a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, they are teleported to the future. But due to a problem with the jump machine, they have to descend from the sky without a plane. Many fall to their deaths, but Charlie, Dan, and many others land in a swimming pool, saving their lives. Immediately, Dan receives a call from a female officer. She tells Dan, "Dan, you need to retrieve a blueprint of that building from a research lab in front of you." Hearing this, Dan sets off with his team. But their path is filled with terrifying aliens. They advance strategically. Since Dan was in the military before, his entire team follows his instructions. They reach the research lab and find many hanging corpses. Dan reports this to the officer, who then tells them to take all the hard drives and important files from the lab. As they are about to leave the building with the items, they encounter the white spike aliens. A gunfight breaks out with the aliens. However, the aliens are so terrifying and powerful that it's impossible for the few humans to defeat them. The female officer orders them to get away from the area where red smoke is being dropped, as bombs will be deployed. They manage to escape with their lives. The scene shifts to Dan, Charlie, and Dorian. They are talking about the war when 2 soldiers arrive and ask them to meet their colonel. Dan introduces himself as Dan Forrester. The colonel then introduces herself as Murray Forrester. Dan realizes that the colonel is his own daughter, Murray Forrester. He's thrilled that she will become a colonel in the future. Colonel Forrester tells Dan, "I have no emotional attachment to bringing you here. You have been brought here for a big mission." When Dan asks about the mission, the colonel says, "You will know when the time is right." A little later, Colonel Forrester takes Dan to their research room and talks about the white spike aliens. She explains that the ones they fought are male spike creatures. However, there is a female spike creature, and if she can be killed, no more aliens will be born. This female spike alien lives underground, guarded by all the male spikes, preventing anything from harming their queen. They plan to capture the female spike, get a DNA sample, and perhaps find a solution. So, they fly there by helicopter to kill the Spike. The soldiers couldn't capture the female Spike, so Colonel Forrester goes down there. But the situation worsens. All the surrounding male Spikes start arriving. Seeing this, Dan goes down to save his daughter and manages to trap the female Spike in a cage. They successfully escape by helicopter with the Spike. The scene changes, showing them keeping the Spike captive in a lab in the middle of the ocean. They take DNA samples from the Spike and start making an antidote. Meanwhile, the female Spike regains consciousness. As soon as she does, she makes loud noises from her mouth, signaling other Spikes, and they start coming towards their lab. The soldiers fire, but with so many Spikes, they can't do much. A helicopter that came to save the Colonel and Dan is also destroyed by the Spikes. But in the midst of it all, a Spike injures the Colonel. The Colonel gives Dan the DNA sample and tells him to make many copies. And just then, the female Spike arrives and falls down with the Colonel. Seeing this, Dan also jumps down. However, his jumper's time runs out, and he returns to the present. Dan is heartbroken because he couldn't save his daughter in the future. So, as soon as he returns to the present, he hugs his daughter and sits by her all night, thinking, "I have to save my daughter before such an event happens in the future, no matter what." But the time jumper to the future is broken, so it's impossible to go back. Dan is devastated by this thought. Just then, Dan's wife gives him a clue. Without delay, Dan goes to Dorian. They start researching when these Spikes will attack Earth in the future. From a Spike's claw that Dorian has, they discover through research that they will originate from a fireball. This means that the Spike's ship is somewhere where this event occurred. And then Dan remembers the boy named Martin from his class. So, he goes to Martin to hear about this. From him, they get many clues, and based on those clues, they learn that these aliens are trapped under the ice in Russia. The ice will melt in the future, and once it's completely melted, the aliens will attack Earth. So, they decide to go to Russia and kill the frozen aliens now. However, their government doesn't allow them to do this in another country. So, Dan decides to go there using his father's plane. Dan goes to his father and explains everything, and his father understands and agrees. The military officer makes many copies of the antidote and gives them to Dan. They arrive in the snowy area of Russia and find the alien ship there. They see many dead Spike aliens. They also see many captive Spikes that are still forming. So, they start injecting them one by one. However, some white Spikes wake up in the midst of this and attack Dan and his team. Another fight between Dan and the Spikes ensues here, in which a soldier sacrifices his life and blasts the entire alien spaceship along with himself. In the end, only the female Spike survives. Dan and his father go there to catch her. But with much cunning, Dan's father, along with Dan, successfully kills the alien Spike. And the movie ends. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.